Alright guys, we got some Guntank on King of the Hill here. We're just gonna run right into it. I'm gonna try not to flame the character too much. I assume you guys know by now that I don't really think it's particularly good, but yeah. So, our Guntank player yeets a bomb in there, misses because it tosses it too high. Oh well. It's, in general, pretty good to try and take an off angle. If you control that area, you're gonna get a lot of off angle pressure on the enemy. Our rest of our team doesn't support it, so it be, but we run off and get health. Everything's fine. And get an unluckily hit. So a lot of people talk, when they talk about Guntank, they talk about Guntank's primary fire having a multiple damaging effect on multiple enemies and how that's really, really good. It is in certain circumstances. In other circumstances, it's not a good idea to try and use that over using the aim down primary fire, because when you're attacking multiple enemies and doing less damage, you have a lower rate of killing things. You're doing more damage overall, yes, but you're not killing things quite as easily, quite as quickly, which means they're giving longer time to attack you. So you have to keep that in mind. If you don't kill them quickly, they're going to be able to attack you for longer. So you have to decide, do I want to do the mass damage and do more damage overall? I believe you're doing about like 60% damage. I think damage per second on a single target is like 21, and damage per second to 3 targets is 31 total. I could be wrong about the exact numbers, but I think that's it. Yeah, so you got to make the decision. So, our Guntank player fed a little bit. You got to be careful. Guntank has a big hitbox. It has a decent amount of HP, but it has a long hitbox also, so you will get hit by a lot of things. Right now is not our best situation, and so we choose to dip. Perfectly good. Yeah, like, you're gonna want to not try and take a lot of 1v1s with this character. It just doesn't win them. You are gonna want to play your damage from further away and try and just honestly pump in damage like that while taking little. You don't win 1v1s. It does make for some awkward circumstances where other characters can take 1v1s, but you really can't, so you need to avoid them. Finishing off targets with the rocket launcher like that is good. Because enemies will oftentimes think that they can push you a little bit harder than you can, and then you use your rockets to finish them off. So, good. You just have to pay attention to how they travel. That looks like a fat finger, so it'd be. It is a very useful ability, the charge ability, because it allows you to use it as an additional dash if you need to, in addition to getting a solid amount of damage on things. You should have to keep in mind there's certain things that you really, really don't want to try and use that into. A little bit unlucky that ends up getting caught out there. But you don't want to try and use it into a Sosby, for example. They will slap you around. I played lots of Sosby. Anytime a Guntank used that ability into me, I crush them. Something important to know about charge is that it does, in fact, block cooldowns. So, if you do use it into something like a Tomahawk or a... I believe it blocks Tomahawk. It should. I've seen it block Marseille's hook. Maybe it only counts as like a shield. Maybe it's stun throughable. I'm not sure, but it should block other cooldowns. But you just don't really want to use it in something like a Sosby because they just kind of walk it off and then they clap your cheeks. So, as you can see here, it's a little bit awkward to use the ultimate. It's very strong, but it's a little bit awkward. So you have to keep that in mind. Just learn how it works. It has like a bit of a heft to it, so it travels interestingly. So you have to keep that in mind. So moving on to the second round. We won the first one. Solid, consistent gameplay. You're always going to want to try and get to the objective early on these sort of maps, because if you don't, then you're going to have a hard time. You're basically just walking into setup cooldowns. Should use an extra dash there, a little bit slow. But yeah, on these sort of maps, you want to get there first. If you get the ability to set up on these King of the Hill maps, it gives you a huge advantage. It gives you the defender's advantage, essentially. On any map that you can be the defender, you always have an advantage because you get to choose where you're going to attack from. It is also an advantage to choose when, but in a game mode like this, where the real currency of the game is time, and time in control of the objective, it doesn't really give you that much of an advantage. So you want to be there first, and you want to defend well. and secure angles to get that advantage. Chasing down kills is fine on Guntank. You just got to be careful not to chase down a kill you can't secure. And pressure from a side angle like this is also excellent. You just want to make sure that you're not split too far away from your team. Guntank does feel tanky, and it sort of is. It just has a very big hitbox also, so you do end up taking a lot more damage from things. You're a lot easier to hit. Whereas another character, if they're aiming at you and they're missing, they're still going to be hitting you. So our Guntank player chooses to use the charge ability against the Sazabi here, but you have to understand it's not to take the fight against the Sazabi, it's to push them away. It's a little bit why I don't want to go too deep into why I don't think Guntank is particularly amazing, other than the fact that basically everything in the game does something better for every single one of its abilities. But in this situation, you don't want to be using that cooldown to try and secure a kill against a Sazabi, because you're just not going to be able to. You don't do a lot of damage, so you're never going to break through the shield. And you don't really have that much damage that can go through a shield. So unless the Sazabi is really low, you're going to not be able to kill it. It is good, however, to try and use your rockets to finish off kills on things with shields. You just have to hit it behind them. You couldn't quite see it, but our Guntank player here used it against the GM and wasn't able to secure the kill because it hit in front of the shield. So, such it be. And our Guntank player is aiming a little bit high on these things with the rockets. They have a really interesting trajectory where they're actually like way slower than they look. They're still hittable. They just arc a lot. So you have to keep that in mind. And here you can see us setting up on A. That's solid. And our Guntank player chooses to use the ultimate a little bit early. But assuming this was a solid fight and the enemy was actually taking a fight realistically, sorry, not realistically, well, our Guntank player just secured a 5v6 versus the enemy. So now instead of a 6v6, it's a 5v6. So that's a solid usage of that ability. You just got to keep in mind when you're using abilities and ultimates in particular, what advantage am I getting from it is what you got to ask yourself. And in a situation like this, it was securing the fight into a 5v6, which is a very powerful advantage in a hero shooter game like this, where every single person on your team that's alive and on their team gets exponential value. So it's very, very beneficial to do that sort of a thing. It's just in a lot of circumstances, people end up using their ultimates when they don't need to. And essentially it makes it so that people have a lot of kills and they feel good, but the ultimate didn't end up doing anything because the fight was already won, or the fight was already lost, or let's just say you ult in that circumstance, but it's like 30 seconds earlier. So yeah, you get a kill, but they're back before the fight even starts. And the only thing you get is a little bit of positional advantage, but you're losing your ult from that. It's not really worth it. So you really have to keep in mind what you're doing with your ultimate before you use it and whether it's actually going to get a proper amount of value. Make sure to check out these 6 mobile suit guides. They're very well thought out in comparison to my other videos, really organized, talking about abilities, how to play the character, when to play, what the strengths and weaknesses, and more. Thanks guys for watching. If you like the videos, then please give me a subscribe. I would appreciate it. And later guys.